Hello, hello. It's another Sunday evening, and it's the Sunday Superversive Livestream. I'm here with my co-host, Anthony Marchetta. I am Ben Wheeler, and I'm here with Matthew Pungitore to talk about his book, Fiendilkfjeld Castle. How are you doing today, Matthew?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me. This really is an honor.
Hey, it's a pleasure to have you here. As always, I like having friends of the show and friends of, just sort of
hmm
everything here and chatting, being friendly, connecting. I want to thank my listeners and all that jazz as always. We couldn't do this without you. So, Matthew, tell us about Fiendilkfjeld Castle. What inspired you to make it, and what's the plot?
So, Fiendilkfjeld Castle tells the story of essentially a missing woman, detective trying to find her along with this man, very wealthy man, who is having dreams of her. And don't want to spoil too much, but it is gothic horror. What inspired me was obviously my connection with the genre itself. I've always felt a connection to gothic fiction, weird fiction, dark fantasy, slipstream, things like that. So I just it was something that I knew I just had to do. Being immersed in the genre, in the culture itself. I mean, this is just part of who I am, and I wanted to tell a story that could reach out to others of that sensibility who are looking for something of the gothic that isn't just vampire love stories and things like that. Something that was true to the genre itself while also trying to stay new.
Absolutely. I am, of course, a big fan of Gothic literature. I enjoyed The Castle of Otranto, the big classic, as well as The Nightland, which is Gothic horror in a sort of sci-fi attitude. Anthony, do you have any Gothic?
Yeah,
Mhm.
what I was going to say is I have the book pulled up on Goodreads because I am new to your work, Matthew, but I'm reading the summary and your description here, and now I want to read it. So you have got a new reader. Uh,
I
so
thank you, thank
good,
you, thank you.
so good for you there, because it looks really good. Yeah, I do like Gothic horror. Fall of the House of Usher is one of my favorite short stories. Like Ben, Awaken the Nightland, the anthology, which almost John C. Wright's magnum opus, uh, is an incredible book. I probably am not as big a fan as him. I haven't read. What was the book you mentioned, Ben?
Castle of Otranto.
Yeah, that I haven't read. I've really only read Poe, though I am a fan of Poe. So, and I've read Nightland, but I greatly enjoyed both of them. So this does look like something I would enjoy.
Yeah, Thodomir Fiendikfjeld is obviously, he's tortured because he's having these dreams for a long time. And this woman is obviously just someone who has filled a void in Thodomir's life. And, he'll do anything to try to find her. And it just, essentially, the quest when he's trying to find her with the detective leads him just deeper into nightmare after nightmare. And I, when I was doing Fiendilkfjeld Castle, I knew I wanted to do a story of an unreliable narrator and play with that. If you're a fan, obviously, of Poe, whose narrators are always immoral, Byronic, and insane, then I really think that you'll find something special here in Fiendikfjeld.
Yeah, the plot actually, and I actually do have a semi-specific question about it in a second, but it does remind me a little bit of the sort of thing that John C. Wright would come up with, going out to rescue a beautiful girl in a castle. But would you describe the book as superversive yourself?
So my connection with the Superversive is a little. I feel like I'm adjacent to the pulp rev community and the Superversive community because I'm leaning more. Obviously, I'm passionate of the pulps and that sort of pulp lifestyle, that pulp attitude. But I'm more deeply entrenched in the weird fiction side of it. So when it comes to being superversive, I would say yes, it is superversive because it it explores a level of sorrow, despair, horror, and terror in a way that is meant to evoke the sublime. This feeling of being close to danger, being close to despair, and finding something in that you can actually look back on and feel like you had fun. When you finish Fiendilkfjeld Castle, I want people to feel like they just came out of a freak show. And I'm the showman. And it was horrifying and grotesque because essentially I feel like all fiction needs to be provocative. It should be controversial. It should shock and insult you in some ways, and there should be a thrill in that.
That's an interesting perspective because it's not something that people would associate necessarily with the superversives, though. In a weird sense, what's superversive is also subversive in the modern fictional landscape when you compare the sorts of things that we come out with to what mainstream publishing comes out with. Again, from your description and everything that you're telling me about it, this seems like a book that would be right up my alley, so I'm definitely gonna have to give it a shot. Uh, and I'm glad that I've learned about it now.
A thousand
And
thanks. A thousand thanks.
this is inside baseball for the listeners. So I knew we would be talking to people, and Ben was handling who we were going to be getting on the show more than me this week. So I didn't realize that we were talking to Matthew originally. So if you're wondering how could you be talking to him without having read the book yet, there is your answer. I did not realize he was going to be one of the guests. Uh, Once I learned he was, I said, "Oh, I better look up his book so I could ask questions about it." And I said, "This looks cool."
Right.
So that's it. Once I do finish the book, if I think that it's something that's really interesting, worthy of a discussion, I'll tell Ben, and we may have a book week. We tend more towards anime and manga, mostly because of me, but part of that is I haven't read anything that I thought was interesting enough to warrant a real discussion in a while, and this could be that thing.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm so honored to hear that. I'm thrilled. I mean, there's I feel like what I wrote, there's a little something in it for a lot of people who are also into like detective and mystery because it really is a mystery. It's incongruent mysteries that like you almost feel like I really wanted it to feel labyrinthian, of feeling like you're hitting brick walls, not really knowing where you're going. There's a bunch of dead ends, but like I said, Allison is the missing heiress, and Sotomir is seeing this woman who looks like Allison. So even that little detail, this woman he's chasing, you don't even know if he's really chasing the right woman. And he's obviously there to help this detective to investigate the disappearance. The detective Roman, who's also Allison's friend, they go into Italy, into the region itself of Fiendikfjeld, discovering this secretive, reclusive place, this fictional fake universe, and they they want to rescue her. And on this quest, obviously he's learning more about his family, and he hears that the region is haunted. And of course, that is also part of the genre itself, because Gothic is all about, the way I see it at least, digging up the past. You see.
Yeah, it's definitely something I think that's from your description. It's in the superversive spirit. What superversive is more of an art than a science, I think, and
Pretty much.
that's a conclusion I came. Yeah, that's a conclusion I came to after mistakenly trying to turn it into more of a science, and this caused like kind of a fake feud with the Pulp Rev. Because they thought that we were trying. They thought that like the Pulp Revolution, the Superversives have different. I don't know that they didn't that they weren't
It's
really
water under the
compatible
bridge.
with each other. It was a weird thing.
It's
It was a weird thing, and it was. Go ahead.
I consider this water under the bridge.
It
The
definitely is. I just bring it up because
yeah,
I think that it's important to realize when you're talking about superversive that it's not something that I think you can that you can quantify so directly.
yep. It's
However, this definitely fits the mold from what we talk about when we talk about superversive fiction.
it does. I was pretty happy with what I've read so far. Um, no complaints. I thought the dock scene uh was fairly spooky. Um, like there's enough horror elements to keep me interested, and there's plenty of variety that, you really just kind of get to enjoy it. You know what I mean? Um, I'm just trying to think. Yeah, no, I still like. I haven't gotten that far into the book, but um, I'm still questioning it. It's like, are the characters dead? Is it this? Is this some sort of metaphor for that? What's with all the grave robbing? I got plenty of questions going into it, and it's absolutely fantastic so far. Um,
Thank, I'm beaming. Thank you so much.
right. Let's see here. Um, So you said you're inspired by many of the classics. Let's talk a little bit more about that. What sort of
Sure.
so if you were to say when you started writing this book, I want to write a book like, what would your answer be?
Well, I'm also deeply inspired by a lot of Italian authors, Umberto Eco, uh, Italo Calvino, sorry, Italo Calvino. The Name of the Rose. Um, Obviously, Horace Walpole. I definitely wanted to try to make something as traditional as possible, while also just sort of speaking back to Italian literature. Uh, and honestly, at that point, it just became whatever came from my imagination. Uh, but I definitely wanted it to feel like mystery, a bit of the ecclesiastical, a bit of the supernatural, and obviously dense horror and that grotesqueness, insanity.
I get you. Hmm. It does feel like that. With how has it been received?
Well, I'm trying my best to to get awareness out there. Trying to get people to obviously review it. It seems like people who who have reviewed it are enjoying it. I think some people may have thought it was a little uh, too dark. Maybe some people thought it was a little bit too slow. So I don't really have enough feedback to exactly say, but from what I'm seeing right now, it seems like a lot of people are definitely vibing with the gothic horror elements of the book. So, at least I can have some pride in that.
Right. Hey, at least it's not anything bad, I guess. Um, I was pretty happy with what I've read so far. I dig when people say things are slower or something like that, but it's not. It didn't detract from the book, at least as far as I was reading. Um, Anthony. Oh wait, no, is this Mr. Walker? Hold on a second. Let's see here. There's a lot of feedback. Anthony, mute yourself for a second while you
I'm
reset
here.
it. Yep. All right.
Yep, I'm still on.
Yeah. No, I'm saying that there's feedback from your thing, dude.
Right now, I am not moving. Nothing
Okay.
else in my room is making noise.
Okay.
So who even knows?
Who even knows? Discord is a mystery that keeps giving. Anyway, I enjoyed what I read. I thought that much of it was, um, pretty good, spooky stuff. Um, I'm not surprised by your, even though I am not, let's say, versed in Umberto Eco, I can still see where you, uh, where you can pull your inspiration from. Uh, let's see, we got about 10 more minutes with you. So, what's your next projects?
Well, I'm going to continue. I've got a few things in mind. Don't know if I exactly want to dive deep into what those are exactly yet, but I am continuing to write short stories. I do have an anthology that I am thinking about putting together. A lot of stories that I had submitted, and things that didn't get accepted. I just want to scoop them up together like a bunch of dead leaves and make them presentable, putting them in an anthology, and reach out to more people because I do feel like I have something to offer people. People who are thinking about getting into gothic and the weird and trying to see things through my lens. I honestly think that with what I'm trying to do, I think people are going to want to read what I have to write because I am trying to provide something that reaches back to the tradition of the genre while in a way trying to reinvent it in a way that's actually fun and not
Dreary.
preachy. Dreary, maybe dreary, but fun. You can have fun with dreary. You can have fun with spooky. Just getting people to think. Instead of see the problem with trad publishing these days and the modern works of horror and what passes as gothic fiction today is the fact that it seems to only be either a two roads lane here. It's
Mm-hmm.
either they want you to consume or they just want you to have a response. It's cheap reactions. I want to go back and create something that is truly inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know what that is. Sure, yes, it's drenched in misery. It's drenched in fear. Is there going to be subversion of expectations? Sure, maybe, but it's not meant to be subservient to tear you down. It's to take the reader and say, like, just just come alive, experience something, explore with us, through these words. I'm deeply passionate about that aspect of my work. and I want to create a space where people can feel like they can,
Mhm.
feel the sublime.
I figured you'd, fit in with us. The uh we have a lot of sort of ideas like that. We want to seek the better portion. We want to grow what we have into something more than just some dreary, all right, here's sequel 27. And,
Mm-hmm.
guess what?
Mm-hmm.
He's still traveling to Isengard. Except it's not Isengard, it's knockoff Isengard, and the gift shop's terrible. Um, there's a whole bunch of things that we could have that we just don't because of you know publishers not actually wanting to serve their customers but instead serve their politics or serve a bottom line that honestly doesn't love them and doesn't won't take care of them in the end.
Right, and I do care about my readers. I do try to stand away from my art, my writing. When you read my work, sure, it'd be great if you could separate me from the book, the art from the artist. Uh, and there's going to be some things that are obviously going to disappoint people because I don't shy away from things that are shocking, and sure, maybe my endings are bleak and maybe a bit nihilistic, but the intent is always to have fun and to inspire and to create something of lasting beauty. I mean, you can make a statue, right? And the statue can show this sad, very sad scene, right? But when you look at it, that experience of sorrow and danger is still something that inspires you, and it's something that no one can really define. I don't think anyone has ever really defined it, and that is perfectly fine. We don't need to define it. We just have to feel it and let that guide us.
Hmm. There's like the whole definition thing that I've seen some people do. You're right. It's like I view pulp as more on the definition side of things than not. Not because of it's worse or anything like that. Not none of that nonsense. But just in the sense of you could break down what is and isn't pulpy. But superversive, like you said earlier, is part of the sublime. This feel that's
Mm-hmm.
more than just some sort of grindhouse product that's the same as all the other products that have ever been groundhouse. um like like you could make John Carter of Mars, and I've read some really good imitations of John Carter and Mars, and they're honestly worth reading. Fantastic. I hope they sell. Maybe
Right,
someday
right.
I'll reach out to the author or something like that. But it's not the same as something new, something truly wonderful that's more than just, this was successful, so we'll do this. How many pretenders came after, the Dresden Files, or, Interview with the Vampire, or Harry Potter, or Twilight, or,
Right.
and I repeat myself, but, all kinds of things you can do with it.
Yeah, I mean, like Interview the Vampire and Rice's books, I love them, and sure, the characters don't fit the pulp mode, and maybe people will criticize me because they'll think, oh well, his characters are too depressing, they're too whiny, you know, uh, there's not enough action, they don't take enough action. But I think what's more important for me is that it makes sense to them. I know a lot of people give Lovecraft's work uh, flack, for his characters being so cowardly. But I don't mind. I don't mind my characters being cowardly because I want my readers to not just attach to one person. Not you don't have to attach to the narrator. Look at the work as a whole, and the feeling, and you'll see this tapestry unfold. So I'm obviously aware that my work is it's not going to be for everyone. and that's fine. I just want to reach the people who will resonate with it. I'm not trying to pretend that it is something that it isn't. I just want to do something that I love, and then hopefully other people will come along for the journey and share this dream space that I've created with the words.
Outstanding. I can't disagree or even add to it. Though Interview with a Vampire, I don't know if we can have you back. I mean, Interview with a Vampire. Now we all have our
Never
little.
read it.
Never read it. Neither have I.
Nope.
It's just on reputation. Uh, but it's I like ripping on things that have had a quasi negative experience on like these on the culture and writing and stuff like that, because it was one of those things that sort of moved vampires away from like ultimate evil sort of things and into they're kind of like people too, people who eat people, but people.
Well, I love writing characters like that because there is something cathartic and wonderful and inspiring about watching the downfall of a character like in The Monk. You know,
Hmm.
great gothic novel. Uh, you essentially are getting this Faustian experience with it, and it's absolutely, I mean, it's almost indescribable with the level of emotion that it evokes, because of you're going along on this crazy journey that sane people would never take, or would they? And I definitely like to splash around in that darkness.
And you see, I've never been one to be like sane, like I've seen people at bars and stuff like that. The idea of sanity and some sort of uh, thing that people can have has
Right.
clearly never spent a night in debauchery. You know what I mean?
Oh, and I like, okay, so another element of Gothic, which I love, is the decadence. Portrait of Dorian Gray,
Yep.
like we were talking about, The Monk, Matthew Lewis, obviously, Byron's work, Shelley's works. You can see it in Dracula, evil and the sublime, the grotesque, juxtaposed with the innocent and the pure and the virtuous.
Yep.
I want all of that. Like Dante Alighieri's Inferno, Purgatory, and Paradiso. I want my work to explore all of these things. Uh, I I can't break away from it. It's just what I do.
And that's a fantastic way for us to end it. Matthew, besides
Mm-hmm.
Fiendikfjeld Castle, do you have anything else you'd like to advertise?
Well, I did a novelette um, a while back. It's very, very short. Uh, Midnight's Eternal Prisoner, Waiting for the Summer.
That
I
sounds like
also.
an anime title. Put it in Japanese, and we might get some interest. No, I'm being cruel. So, what was it again?
Midnight's Eternal Prisoner, Waiting for the Summer. It's a bit more on the dark fantasy, uh, mixed in with the absurd. A tale of action,
Hmm.
fighting. you know,
Right.
uh, flawed characters for sure. But I'm not, obviously, I don't plan to stop writing anytime. So I'm still working on things. Like I said, I've got this anthology thing that I'm working on, and hopefully some other projects. Like I said, don't want to talk too much about it. I don't know exactly what to expect myself, but what I can say is that I'm trying to gather these stories, and of course I'm always submitting stories too. Hoping to get one of my stories out there. But for all the stories that I have that haven't gotten accepted, haven't gotten published in anything, I want to take them, put them together, and then self-publish something like that, maybe through
Yeah.
Amazon or something. Who knows? But I'm not done yet.
Glad to hear it. Matthew, thank you for joining us. Later on, once Anthony and I will spend some more time with your work, we'll probably invite
Yep.
you back on. Work on
I
something
love
to
it.
have something new to have advertised by that time. We'd really appreciate it. Anyway,
I would love it. Thank you.
absolutely, you've been a great guest. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Will you come center stage?
Hello, folks.
Hello.
Hello.
Glad to be back.
Absolutely. You sound hale and hearty indeed. I'm glad to hear it. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good for a man with now down half a leg. But
Oh, I didn't.
Oof.
Ooh, I'd never actually heard what it was you were experiencing there. Ugh.
yeah, about when I was finishing up Reavers of the Void, and I was getting ready to send the finished book out to backers. I had gotten sick for 2 weeks straight, and prior to that, I was nursing a wound on the underside of my right foot.
Mm.
And that wound was a blister that I had to lance, and I was taking care of it the way I had done for many years as a Boy Scout.
Right.
Well, I'm bedridden for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks at the beginning of December, and during that time, it got infected, and the infection accelerated very fast. By the time I recovered, I needed to go to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, the infection had gotten to the bone and was starting to affect my liver. So my liver and my kidneys. So I had to go into surgery right away, and that's then long and short, they had to take a good chunk of my right leg, not past the knee. Thankfully, I still have a knee.
So what you're saying is you're a pirate.
Yeah. I'm now walk around awkwardly with a prosthetic leg, but and I was
Right.
in rehab for 4 months after that, which is why I was delivering digital copies late.
Right.
I didn't have my PC in my room for about 2 months, and once I got that in, I started sending out copies digitally, and
Mm-hmm.
when I published the paperback is shortly after I got home in a little over a year ago. So during the rest of that time, part of it was me starting to get my notes back together. Part of it was me paying more attention to making certain I wasn't going to die anytime soon. Because unfortunately I had suffered permanent damage to one of my kidneys, and that required about a year's worth of monitoring, under the care of a kidney specialist every 6 months. In fact, I talked to him again on Monday.
Yep.
But everything seems to be going good right now, and that's why I've started resuming work on the books.
First off, I'm glad that you've lived through all this, and secondly, are you sure your calling
Yeah.
isn't to write horror? 'Cause that, that's like
yeah,
That's a turn
I'm-
of events.
right. You sure you don't
Well,
have any lost brothers lying around or something like that?
if I have any lost brothers, it's news to me.
Well,
Because
it usually is.
So yes, I'm grateful for all the folks who are praying for me all this time and all of that, and not to be glib, but
You lived through it. Be glib.
Yeah. So I've started my Indiegogo campaign for the book 2 of the Star Knight saga, which is now titled Hounds of Nimrod. And we're picking up a few months after Reavers of the Void ended. And we're following the plot, we're following the leftover plot thread where our villain, who masterminded the events of the first book, had left one witness who happens to be our heroine, Countess Gabriella Robin. Well, he needs to do something about her, but he can't kill her because he needs to hand her off to his supernatural ally, a fallen angel, in order to fulfill a contract. Meanwhile, Gabriella, being a little mad about being used as a pawn in an infernal scheme, has been collaborating with her, with the man she wants to marry, our hero, Lord Roland, of the Star Knights. And she's managed to convince her father, Count Robin, to participate in a very interesting and very active manner. And in fact, he makes his first appearance in this book. So we get to see why Gabriella is so attracted to Roland, because, well, women tend to take their fathers as the model of the men who they should marry. And so we have the plot of Hounds of Nimrod is a more of an intrigue tale where we're looking at plot counterplot and hero and villain trying to outwit each other. The heroes want to force Count Kiss, who's the villain in question, to
for the
out
longest
himself.
Time, I thought it was pronounced Count Keese, like he's.
Yeah, it's Count Kiss because the man who Count Kiss is based on is based off of out of an infamous Norwegian traitor
Really?
during World War II.
Oh,
yes.
So it's not Quisling, it's Kiesling.
No,
Kissling?
it's actually Quisling, but I omitted the U when I. Mm-hmm, yeah. It's based off of Vidkun Quisling. So, yeah, it's been a little while. I think I can just let that one out of the bag.
Fair.
So the plot of the second book involves Count Kiss trying to track down Gabriella, but he's checked. He's checked because he has to stay in his diplomat role in Rome. But he has another option, and that's where our title character comes from. We are introduced to the persona of Master Nimrod, who is, as the name implies, a hunter and a tracker. And he has a group of followers who he refers to as his hounds. And they will be chasing her around the solar system of Earth. So most of our action is going to be around Earth, Mars, Jupiter, etc., etc. And this means that our action is going to be more personal, more smaller scaled, and not as big as it was the first time around. And by the time this story is over, both hero and villain neither side gets a clear victory. Because go figure, this is a series, so I want to set up for the third book, which is currently the tentative title for the third book is Siege of Second Salisbury. And the B plot, such as it is for Hounds of Nimrod, is setting up for book 3.
Fantastic. I have enjoyed your work so far. I thought the fighting was pretty good. The character's nice and dynamic, and the act, it was all very satisfying as it should be. Let's see. I've been waiting for a bonus to kick in from work, which is why I haven't. But I just saw that you've added. Let me take a look at it. To your Indiegogo campaign for Hounds of Nimrod, a character illustration for $50.
I will give full credit to my illustrator Artanon for that. That was his idea, as is the back cover option. I as soon as he proposed those, I immediately said sure and added those to the campaign. I honestly am kicking myself for not thinking of it myself.
Isn't that always the case?
Yeah. So the campaign, I am blatantly copying Brian Niemeyer's perks because they work so well for him, and they're perfectly applicable for the books I'm writing. So I do have Build a Mech. There are 4 slots of those remaining at $100 a pop, and if we make goal, I am going to unlock another perk that offers a similar option for those who want something a little bigger. And it's the same deal. You will be, I'll get a hold of you. We'll work out the schematics and the lore and all of that, and it'll become part of the series canon. And then once we figured out the dimensions and the appearance, that's when Artanon does his magic. I post the results to the blog and add it to the lore tab on my blog. And Artanon's in the chat. He can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he'll send a copy of the illustrations straight to the backer if we have, since I'll have the email address and we can just CC him. And after that, well, congratulations, you've bought a little chunk of an IP that I hope that I have big plans for over the next few years.
Oh, absolutely.
After I finish Second Salisbury, I actually do want to start looking into doing all 3 of these books together as a single audiobook. And I want to start seriously looking at doing a manga adaptation.
Ooh.
Yes, I do want to do a manga adaptation for Star Knight. And Brian Niemeyer, who will be my editor as soon as I can afford to pay him, has pointed out that I have a very, very visual imagination that doesn't always work to my credit in the novel medium, but will be very good if I can work with a good comic artist to put together a manga adaptation.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that sounds like a lot of fun, especially for the world that you've put together, because it's how do I want to put it? It's not that it's like simple good versus evil, blah blah. It's that all the characters pop out dynamically. So if I were to get the character illustration, which I'm eyeing up, as well as a signed copy, because I am, if not anything, a rather slatternly person for a good signed copy. Like an illustration of what was Jack's name? I should have reread your book in preparation for this.
Oh, Dashing Jack, our space pirate.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, honestly, favorite character.
You're not the only one.
Just saying. Might get some nice character illustrations of Dashing Jack, just because it was worth it. It was pretty good stuff.
Yeah. For Hounds of Nimrod, not only do I introduce Gabriella's father, we also get a little more time with one of Gabriella's friends, Lady Olga. And the reason for that is because I do want to slowly build up to where she's the feature heroine of a side story, which is basically, that's going to be, right now it's currently called The Tragedy of Lady Olga, but that kind of gives away the ending. That, and I need a few more source materials before I can really dive into it, because just listening to Sabaton isn't going to be good enough.
Right. Is she flying out there in in a Valkyrie-esque brassure, you know, on a winged mecha, uh, something 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 Siegfried reference something.
I hadn't thought of that, but that's an interesting idea.
Ah,
No, I know what Lady Olga looks like because her, at least in terms of her face and her figure, is based off of a real person that I and probably more than a few people in the chat have at least heard of, if not spoken to, at least once. And her husband, her husband will is also the basis for another character that will be in that standalone novel.
mm,
As here's the spoiler. It's set in a place based off of the story's called the Siege of New Vienna. Go figure, kids. If I have to tell you any more than that, I'm spoiling the entire thing.
when will the Ottomans learn?
Um, let's see. The other thing I'm putting in for Hounds of Nimrod is we're seeing some smaller mechas show up. We're seeing some smaller mecha. We're also starting to see some more personal scale gear. Master Nimrod and his hounds have bodysuits that have human augmentation abilities. Yeah. Not quite as bulky as the suits that make up the Crisis series, but something along those lines. The idea here is I wanted to have a personal scale villain that had an edge that wasn't built off of either powered armor or a giant robot, and I figured out a way to do it. And ironically, Brian is going to be partially credited for inspiring it, because when he went on about his talk about graphene when he was last promoting Combat Frame Xseed yet again. I actually started looking at what graphene is and what it does. And it goes, that's pretty interesting. What else can we find? And so I found videos on non-Newtonian materials that are currently being experimented with with the idea of using them for armor to be used against blunt force trauma, and with suitable layering with other materials to be used with body armor, so that you can actually get shot with 30 caliber bullets, and instead of having to worry about your insides being turned to goo, this non-Newtonian material will actually absorb almost all of that blunt force impact, and spread it out. Because the way it works is, normally it's kind of semi-liquid, but when you hit it with just enough force, it becomes rigid for a split second and spreads that force out on a plane.
Right.
And you can curve that around. A body, or by that I mean a structure, so that if you incorporate it into car paneling, you can actually T-bone a car, and it'll spread out that impact across the entire frame and mitigate the impact and therefore the damage. If you put it into body armor, it can spread out not only across the whatever side you're hit, but the entirety of the bodysuit, so that your innards are fine. You don't actually have any reason to get knocked over. And if if you couple that with a hard plate, it won't penetrate either.
Right.
So you can totally no-sell getting shot or stabbed.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I know I am, for one, excited about what technology brings. Even though I'm not quite as up on science as I probably should be, just because I find science more interesting to play with than to actually learn.
You're not the only one.
Right?
Yeah.
And in general, it's like the graphene stuff. Like, funnily enough, I think there's a science manga called Dr. Stone, I think, I haven't read the latest chapter, but they
Mhm.
just did an episode where there's a sniper trying to kill Senku. And you know, he basically whips out this giant thing of, I think, cornstarch they were using for ice cream or something like that. So he gets shot. He throws the thing, you know, in front of him just in time to catch, you know, oh my goodness, just in time to catch the bullet coming in from the hidden sniper's location. It's a pretty great scene, you know. Like it's like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know the anime adaptation Dr. Stone got recently actually got a pretty good reception. You know, both both in Japan and in the West. So
Yeah. Ask man, when I did my anime of the Dahlia House, I put Dr. Stone as my anime of the year. I have not been following the manga, however, for no real reason. I really should. I really should.
It's all right.
But the anime was great.
Mhm. Yeah, and speaking of which, you know, while folks are waiting for me to deliver Hounds of Nimrod, I'm gonna start. You know, I'm gonna start talking about some of the other stuff that that has really played into inspiring Star Knight in terms of anime. I've gone on about Legend of the Galactic Heroes more than once, but
Yep.
but I have recently, thanks to our good friend Captain Harlock, I've managed to find a manga site I can that has the 5-star stories in English.
Ooh.
And I finally started reading it after hearing about it and can only finding it in Japanese for years. Oh my god. This is for those who haven't heard, the 5-star stories is is a 80s is an 80s space opera, almost literally, about set in a far future place called the Joker Cluster, which is a sector of 5 star systems, and it plays out over like a couple millennia of time. The very first arc, which is the only one that ever got any anime adaptation, has our hero and our heroine meeting each other for the first time. And they meet, they split, they meet, they split over successive, centuries. As the hero, who is Amaterasu, the sun, the sun god. I'm not kidding. Sometimes in disguise, sometimes not. Gets together with his knights and conquers the entirety of the Joker Cluster under his rule. And the reason it's such an inspiration is because of it's a very romantic, big R romantic. I'm talking about romantic as like the art movement kind of story. And it is also a very Japanese take on romanticism, which means that there's a lot of tragedy that goes on. A lot of the characters who fight and who die, along the way. Some of them are outright bastards, but they serve the hero. Some of them are virtuous men, but they're on the losing side. And all of these men and these men who are fight in these absolutely huge giant robots called motorheads. And they're so complex in their operation that they require a specialized gynoid called a Fatima in order to process all of the information and feed it to the pilot.
So cute robot girl is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yes. We have very
what's
cute.
The name of this series?
5-star stories. You're not going to find it. You're going to. I found the OVA again on 9anime.to. And
You're hard.
And the manga, the manga, I found it on Mangakalot, but it's probably any decent fan subbing site that isn't afraid to actually translate old manga. It will probably have it. sometimes called 5 stars Motonaga. Yeah, I'm not. That's a word I'm not going to try to pronounce. Mm-hmm.
We leave it to the Japanese to best pronounce Japanese words, if they can.
Yeah.
The thing to remember is that this is the same guy, I think, who is he's in the same league and roughly the same the same cohort as the guy who, as the man who created Vampire Hunter D. So you'll see a lot of the same artistic sensibilities and between the two men, but they're not, their art style is not identical. Very similar but not identical, and their storytelling sensibilities are similar but not identical. There's
I get you.
Yeah. And as for the 5-star stories anime adaptation, the reason it still holds its power is because it was made right at that late 80s, that late 80s ascent to the peak. So, it's hand-drawn animation, but it's on high budget, so so you have a lot of key sequences that are very fluid in their animation. They paid a lot of attention to detail. And it has that very distinctive visual style. The sound is fantastic, and it has a very catchy theme song that I love listening to. It's I link it on Twitter every once in a while when Niche Gamer does his weeb shit threads, because it's just that good.
Right.
Yeah, I know that a lot of the deep diving and anime critics, the ones who are more than just hacks, when they talk about the history of anime, will tend to agree that the 80s was peak anime for almost exactly what you said. It was when they were to give budgets to really interesting ideas that they pretty much wouldn't fund later on.
Yep.
Yeah, you would never, you'd never get a 5-star stories, in today's seasonal anime environment. Not at the budget it requires.
You wouldn't even get an Akira nowadays. I mean, you would never
Right.
like Akira get made.
Yeah, I'm still astonished that there was a new version of Legend of the Galactic Heroes.
It's been a while since I saw that.
I watched that first season of Legend of the new one, because my experience with Legend of the Galactic Heroes is I watched. I was a little bit before. I'm about to spoil something big on Legend of the Galactic Heroes, guys, by the way, so plug your ears. But I was right before Young Wen Lee's death. I stopped watching it. I knew Young Wen Lee died just because that was, one of those things when people talk about like saddest anime deaths. Actually, it's a story beat that I wasn't particularly happy with, because I think that the way that they handled the religious elements in Legend of the Galactic Heroes is kind of the show's Achilles heel. But
yeah, it is.
Besides that, moving on from that, I did watch the first season, I think, of the new Legend of the Galactic Heroes.
Yeah.
It was Studio IG.
Mm-hmm.
I actually did not hate it. What was it?
Yeah, it's the big flaw. The big flaw I have with the new thesis is that since I'm also reading the light novels now that they're available.
Oh, really?
English. Yeah,
Yep. They're pretty good.
Mm-hmm. They're pretty good. They're pretty good. Worth getting in print. But the pacing of the light novel is also pretty much the pacing of the new series. And that does not translate well across media.
No. I'll tell you what my
not.
big issue was. My big issue was when they introduced
Say that again?
when they introduced Ruinthal in season too. I flipped in later on. Like, I had watched
Mm-hmm.
forgotten about it, and I said, "Oh yeah, they continued that, didn't they?" So I looked it up, and when they introduced Ruenthal, I thought Ruenthal looked horrifying. He looked absolutely nothing like the character from the original, like not even related.
No, he doesn't. Well,
It was
Guys,
really weird.
we'll have to chat about this another time, and it's certainly a thing that we can deep dive into, because
yes, we can.
unlike some of you scrubs, I watched the original anime, the
Oh,
OVA series, not all of it though.
I get
don't make me whip out the trump card. I have copy 919 of the Sentai's premium box set.
Okay, man. Just relax, okay? Just relax. This is friendly, But no,
I surrender.
right. All right. It's David's time now. So,
All
Bradford,
right.
give us a
Thank you
last
all
word.
very much.
Thank you, Brad.
Hounds of Nimrod is just shy of 500. That's halfway to the goal, and at what the first stretch goal once we hit 1,000 is I am going. Everybody who puts in for a paperback gets a paperback copy of Reavers automatically. Automatically.
So,
And
as I usually do, if I believe in a project, I'm going to once I get my bonus in Wednesday, I am planning on backing your project, certainly for a signed copy, and probably for a character arc. Thank you for joining us, Bradford. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Yep. Thank you all very much. I'm glad to have been back.
Absolutely. David, it's your time to shine. How are you doing today?
We're doing well over here. Let's see. So, Book 3 of the Singularity War, brought to you by Chris Kennedy Publishing and Theogony Press, is out, actually, this very month. This is the book that wraps up a trilogy that's basically been a long careening brawl all the way across the solar system.
Oh, absolutely.
For new readers to it, we have Brant Wills, who our protagonist who's left for dead in the caves underneath Luna, turns out to have a hostile, barely controllable alien symbiont that he eventually gets some level of control of, lest it get control over him. And he's chased from place, location, and planet by ever increasingly ruthless people that want to try and get a hold of and master this technology, which has failed in everyone else so far that they've tried it. The singularity comes from the organization. Singularity War is the organization that is attempting to do this. They're attempting to create basically their own version of the Vinge singularity and redefine humanity basically according to their own desires, whether the rest of humanity wants that or not. And the series is also called Warrior. You have Integration, which is book 1 on the moon, where the action all starts. Interface, which is book 2, where he has to try and stop a singularity lab and what he believes to be the source of the whole thing on a tyrannical Earth known as the State of Terra. And book 3, Warrior Embraced, out now, where he goes to Mars for the dramatic conclusion of the series.
There's a dragon.
There is a dragon. Everything is better when you put a dragon in it, and this is no exception. Venus happens to be masters of bioengineering. They've managed to terraform their own planet somewhat. And so, amongst many other strange and bizarre creatures, they have dragons. And so he steals a Venusian dragon. Because
Of course.
what you gotta do.
You gotta go that exhibit pimp my ride style.
He does. It's scarcely the only vehicle he rips off during the whole series, but it's probably the most exotic one. Part of the point, one of the reviewers that I particularly liked said this was alienating the solar system, and it's not a bad way to put it. There's a lot of stories that have a solar system view type of how things work, as opposed to a galactic view or Earth in near space. But most of them don't really give a lot of different culture and society to each one. In this case, Earth, Luna, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, these are all inhabited full civilizations with their own culture, their own ideas, and their own take on basically how humanity has tried to adapt itself to a very hostile world. So, it really is like the Mars that he goes to is a partially changed Mars. The Earth he goes to is a partially changed Earth. The Lunars have certain changes in their societies so that they're very fastidious. They want to make sure that you don't have anything break down. Everything has to be very orderly, because lunar society is a society where you have hard vacuum on the outside of a wall almost anywhere you go. So they're not a society that tolerates a lot of failure or a lot of chaos. And then you have a character like Brant Wills, where trouble follows him everywhere he goes, as the main protagonist. So this whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was just thinking, so there I was, standing on a street corner, getting kidnapped by evil mad scientists, minding my own business. And as you look behind him, there's a Martian city burning. I swear that this is not my fault at all.
I mean, that's not the worst way to put it. Someone else called it a werewolf story in space, and it kind of is.
I could see that.
Yeah, the symbiote gives him some unusual regenerative capabilities, and he has a hard time controlling the whole thing all from the beginning. So there's an internal struggle as well as an external struggle. He's not just fighting against, these sinister organizations that are trying to control him, or later the various governments that want to try and get a hold of this. He's also fighting an internal battle with this symbiote and with his past. There's a number of stories where you have good man with flaws, or you have stories focusing on bad men as anti-heroes. He's a person with a very dark past, trying to overcome it. So, it's a different take in that.
And there's
Basically,
violence.
Oh, there's so much violence. This trilogy is basically a long careening brawl across 3 planets with a few breaks in between. My goal was basically each small chapterlet, as I was putting the thing together, needed to be something that would make someone read the next one. My goal was basically to create something that would be almost impossible to put down. And the first copy editor I had checking the thing out said, well, you can put on it that it almost got me fired because it got me late for work because I couldn't stop reading it. So, that would be Jason, who started the whole blimp here. But this has been fantastic, and I've had worked with really great people at Theogony Press too, getting this thing out. So.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad it's seeing the light of day. I still hold a candle to Hard Moon. That name and the covers by Corey McCleary.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? What they produced is a pretty great product, and one that's certainly entertaining, which is more important than a lot of things, honestly.
Yeah. The outer part of it is good stuff. I like it. I like the story and title of it. The original titles for them were Hard Moon, State of Terra, and Blood Mars, because it's kind of going for a noir thing. But honestly, it is more of an action story than noir. There's only a little bit of noir in it, so I think that fits better too. But
absolutely,
Yeah, it's kind of its own thing. It doesn't really fit too easily, aside from action sci-fi, into too many others. Let me see what they store it under. I'll be curious to see Amazon's take as to what categories it falls into. It is under action and space adventure, literary fiction, space marine ebooks. There's plenty of space marines. Genetic engineering, science fiction books. So much genetic engineering. Yeah, that's all right. Oh, we also have this wonderful video. This was put together. This was Zitsky that put together the Singularity video, and I got to make sure we have to direct people to that. I need to find one that's not too tagged out. But he did a fantastic job with that. So
I remember that. That was pretty good. I don't have the link though.
I'm going to see. I think there's a link here. Yes, fantastic. It's right here on Amazon, actually. If I can get the proper part of it, this should do. Here we go. It wisely won't let me copy it. It realizes I wish to share this bounty with everybody.
Link it to me through Discord, and I will.
Oh, through Discord? Okay, I'll punch it up on Discord.
Yep, and I'll share it through the network.
There we are. But yeah, I kind of decided to see how I could cram enough action into 3 books, and I think I managed to do it. There is a follow-up that is in the works, which will be not quite Brant at this point. It's going to be the perspective of a warrior in the Jovian Navy, as he deals with all of the events that unfold in the trilogy from their perspective, and deals with the aftermath, because somebody has to pick up the pieces. And it's a lot of pieces.
Oh, absolutely, and that's part of the fun of these sort of adventures, because and it's like, what can you blow up this time? How far is too far? Turns out there's no far is too far. Instead, it's instead it's just who even knows?
Let's see. Woolly Ram. Dragons are all fine and well. Do Venusians have cat girls? Venusians have a huge variety of mutated versions of humanity. So, it's a lot. You get a brief run-in with the Venusians in some detail in Blood Mars. More will be forthcoming in later books. So don't worry, you'll get to see Venus eventually.
So you're saying there's a chance? What's funny is, like, cat girls are the normie. We can do so much better these days. So much better. Centaurs and Lamia and the imagination's endless.
Yeah, Show Tucker would fit right in.
You're going to insult Ben now.
That's so that monster was firmly in the danger zone. Not quite, oh no man, what are you doing, but very much in the danger zone.
Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting question as to modification. It's kind of all over, lurking in the background, and also sits at the core of what's going on in Singularity. And the question is, should people or should people not modify the destiny? And I don't hard answer the question. Some things are obviously out, forcing people into a new destiny without their choice, trying to wipe out the old and that which exists just because it is. Those are obviously out. Other things, it's more of a gray area. They've got some modifications so humans can live on Luna without losing bones and degenerating slowly. You have cyborgs on Mars. You have genetic engineering on Venus initially to be able to accommodate the partly terraformed atmosphere they had. Other strange things have happened to the Jovians. So it's at one point where he's actually, the Singularity guys are boasting about how they're going to transform humanity, and he basically says you're too late. I mean, so the point is, they're not just trying to create change, they're trying to create change that they control. And I can't help but see a bit of that undercurrent in a lot of the push for things like this. So
Oh, absolutely. It's certainly a man's hubris kind of thing, where it's like, but there's no law to say that we can't now, is there? This is Venus. Of course we can create cat girls. It's all fun and games until you realize they have sharp teeth.
well, it gets it gets even worse than that. This monster, as he calls it, and the symbiont, as Singularity calls it, none of them at first really understand what they're dealing with. Big hint by now, it's from space.
Oh.
They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to control it. And they're trying to figure out how to weaponize it and mass produce it and control both it and the people that are injected in it. And the hubris in it is completely insane because empowered by this thing, Brent basically turns into a low-level superhero with this stuff. And so the idea of this stuff going on a rampage should terrify them. But all they can seem to think on is, what happens when we get control over it?
I am your master. You will listen to me. As he gets eaten.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty classic in that regard.
Right. One of the best takes of it was Agatha Heterodyne. She's coming across this defense monster in the underground caverns, and she goes, "Listen, I'm not your master. I didn't make you. You don't have to listen to me. You can do what you want. I'm not going to do anything about it." Like the monster thinks about it for a second, then goes, "Yeah, all right. I can dig this. This is all reasonable."
My beef is with a different mad scientist. All right.
Right. And then he shows up, and he goes, "You will listen to me. I am your creator." He like looks at it, looks at her, looks at it. Well, you can eat them.
Phil Foglio makes quality stuff. So yes.
Yep. So let's talk about your inspirations. You mentioned noir earlier. So would you say that you went for the noir take, or is it more?
I think when I first did this, I was going to do I didn't want to do detective because actually figuring out the detective stuff is kind of boring in some regards because that's super formula. So it was going to be a weird cross between noir and like pulp adventure fiction, but across the solar system.
Right.
And then I had another issue as I was coming up with this. And so I already had the basics of the character, which was he's a bad man who's trying to redeem himself. He's trying to turn over a new leaf, trying to undo the harm he's done, but he'll never be able to do it. There's not that he couldn't do good, but you can't just make the past disappear. And so what happened, though, was I came to a very realistic situation where the weapons that are being employed in this, and it's quite an arsenal. I mean, you've got lasers, you've got rail guns, you've got plasma weaponry, you've got remote-seeking projectiles. How do you keep someone alive with that much firepower flying around? And someone could get lucky once or twice, but even James Bond's luck is going to run out after a while. And so I said, well, he's got this way to regenerate. He's got this strange symbiote he gets in a laboratory, and then it just started going from there. And so his way where he's trying to rebuild his life now is he's literally left for dead. They inject him with the symbiote, it kills him. They throw him down a garbage chute, basically. And he wakes back up. And he's like, I have a new life. I have a new chance to do something that I wouldn't normally have had. I didn't earn it. I didn't do anything to get this new second chance at my life. And I'm going to do the best I can with it. So basically, at that point, he sets off on an adventure against a multi-planetary, sinister organization with nigh unlimited resources and utter ruthlessness, and doesn't look back. He picks up a few allies along the way, gets a cybernated ghost. So ghosts are computer programs that are simulations of the person they were. There's this whole idea running around that if you do a download copy of a brain, it's the same person. It's absolutely absurd. If you make a copy of someone, even a perfect copy, you've made a copy of someone. And if it's in a computer, it's not going to function exactly the same way a brain does. Never mind the whole soul question. So, these computer programs are called ghosts, and they're usually used for things like executors of wills, or to carry on for an organization, or as a legal witness for someone who's like a homicide victim or stuff like that. And so one of the characters in there along with him is a cyber ghost of Sharon, someone he knows, also from his past life, who basically left the download so that he could avenge what happened to her and avenge what happened to the whole situation. So this just kind of goes on where I don't want to say he's leveling up and getting more gear, but let's be honest, he's leveling up and getting more gear. Because he ends up with cybernetics, he steals an alien spaceship, it just keeps going. Rescues another victim of singularity with her own unique abilities in State of Terra. And yes, by the time he gets to Mars, he's got a dragon. It's all fun and games until somebody brings a dragon.
It's not fair. Get down here. You have wings.
You'd think he would seem OP, but most of what I managed to do is make him just survive.
Oh yeah, I've read, quite a few pieces of this thing, and it's pretty great. I'm working my way through Hard Moon now, the first book, and it's absolutely a adventure, a fight every second, all sorts of great. Who's contacting me through Steam? Who does that these days? All kinds of great, just, it's a fun ride. Like, as weird as it is to say that, it's just a great fun ride. Yeah, it's a great fun ride. I don't have anything else bad to say about it. The
That's our
violence, right? The violence is satisfying. The hits are heavy, and the the experience is just exactly what it needs to be. So we've been talking about inspiration. What influenced you on this endeavor? What did you say? It will be like this, except this, and also this.
Well, this was something I planned from the beginning to make basically a commercial action thing. So it doesn't mean that there isn't depth to it, but the goal right from the beginning was I wanted to create science fiction that's entertaining. I wanted this to be something that you could read on the bus or the train or in the hospital waiting room or wherever it happens to be, and make the time go away, visit some different worlds.
Oh, absolutely. And it's always that good balance. Like while most authors we know and love were basically commercial writers, there's still that element of fun and mystery and all the good stuff that just kind of people forget to put in when they're talking about constructed works.
Right?
Excuse me.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
you need that. You need a little bit of wonder, and you need all of that. I think I picked what I decided I was going to do. It was going to be a multiplanetary environment, and I wanted to see each. Originally, it was going to be he'd go to be a different world each time. So yes, it was going to be Hard Moon just because I liked the title, and I'm like, okay, this is a great noir title. Was the original thought. And he was going to visit Mars and Venus and Jupiter, and there'd be a different mystery each time. But as I was working on the story and the background of what was going on with Brant, with the symbiote, and what was going on with Singularity, and the more I kept developing the history of what was going on at the state of Terra, a very different story began to just emerge, like almost in whole cloth. That this was less a multiplanetary noir mystery, find the object type of story, or serial pulp, and more of a story about what evil men with tyranny in their hearts will do, and standing up to it. Because what the state of Terra and what the criminal gangs that he runs into want is a very basic form of that. They want to control resources. They want to control people. But what's going on here is a villainy that I think is much more sinister and seems to kind of resonate, I think, with the age we're living in. Because these guys, what Singularity doesn't want to do is they don't want to control your money, and they don't want to control your resources. They don't want political power. They want to get deep inside everyone and control who they are in a very fundamental way.
there's this.
And
I'm
go ahead.
I'm reminded of a thought when when like they started revealing that like the Chinese base their social credit score off of like things like Facebook pages and whatnot they liked, and how much time they wasted on the internet. So it's like, oh, you like that degenerate, monster girl page or whatever. Looks like you're downgrading a apartment today, son. Like it's one of those things that, yeah, sure, absolutely, science fiction.
Mhm. Well, we really are in the 21st century, and things like that are kind of I guess, a precursor of that. Like,
Yes.
control through technology has reached sort of its nadir or zenith, depending on your point of view. In State of Terror, in the second one, where he's going around, and I address the problem of how do you, when you have a cybernated totalitarian state, how do you sneak around? How do you sneak around when you've got nano dust remotes in the air and into the concrete of every building, and everyone has trackers and all this kind of stuff? So that's what's going on there. And really, that sort of thing is the answer to a question that, while some science fiction authors address it, some don't, which was, why did everyone leave Earth? Sometimes people will say, well, they went because they needed mining or population or environmental collapse or any of that. And they're at least trying. But like, let's face it, there's no environmental disaster that's going to make Earth worse than, say, Mars is now. There's no amount of emigration from our planet that would affect a population balance in a meaningful way. Now, I think we should get out there as fast as we possibly can,
Of course.
but that's because I'm a romantic and you need to have cities in space. Like, that's just how it has to be. We should get out there, go to the other planets, and then go to the stars thereafter. I have another piece I'm working on that actually talks about that. But in Singularity War, what happens is the vice is beginning to close. The world's being locked down, and the people that can actually use the advanced space capabilities that exist at the time do so and get out before it's closed down. First land on the moon, and then they go to other places. And so you have this entire set of societies building in deep space where everyone had their own idea as to how to build a new civilization, because they all have to start from scratch.
Of
And they all
course.
have to be self-sufficient. And they all have to find some way to uniquely adapt to a very hostile world. And they can't go home, ever. So in book 2, I have Brant go home.
Right. And of course, is it? I think that's the one where he shoots himself out of the cannon, isn't it?
Yes.
That's fantastic. I love that scene. Overall, I'm always happy to have some adventure, as well as like the whole. I guess like man against the world. I know that people will look forward to Sundown and Out, which is in the Soul Planetary Anthology.
Yes.
Yes, you worked really hard on that one. And it came out great. Anthony,
A murder mystery. Who murdered the
absolutely,
sun?
yes. Anthony, what's a good space colonization anime that people can go into?
Space colony. It's a very specific genre.
It's very specific indeed.
I mean, the only space operas that I watch are Gundam, I guess. I really liked Iron Blood Orphans and Legend of the Galactic Heroes, but not much beyond that.
Legend of the Galactic Heroes has some space colonization, but I'd say that they're more developed than that. Here's one that people kind of like get caught up on, but Terra for Mars or
Never heard of it.
Terraformers. So basically, it's one of the edgier animes to come out there, where like basically these cockroaches evolved on Mars to become mega, 6 foot tall, slightly racist caricature cockroaches that murder everyone they come into contact with. There's all sorts of different like conspiracies going on, and basically it got started because they decided to terraform Mars. And that's the one that really kind of sticks out to me as one that's about it. There's also, let's see here. Basically, they were designed uh, I'm trying to think. Like the bugs were the terraformers, and then they basically started evolved. It's fantastic. Uh, I'm trying to think here.
So it's again, creature, I am your creator, you must obey me. It always works out so well.
Right. Let's see here. There's also Space Brothers, which is about getting up into space more than colonization itself. Um, I honestly can't think of very many like straight up terraforming stories. I don't know if the Japanese have that spirit in them.
See, I do think that eventually we are going to colonize other planets, and I know that there have been fictional concepts are the one back, which is I think going to happen for the same reason that the original Age of Exploration had, which is people get tired of it and want to go somewhere else. We are already seeing that's going to not doing
Hold on, Anthony. You're
companies are going to be going to drive space. I don't think that I'm going to see anything like that happen soon. So
Anthony.
the world, yes.
Your thing has turned you into a robot. Your microphone.
You know what?
Hold on a second. It's always a joy to work with Discord. Let's.
It's about more me than the platform probably. This and coming up with low budget band-aids to try and fix things is still.
Well, whatever you've done, it's improved it. I'm just trying to think, horror movie wise, one of the big ones, and this is a not a spoiler, but Pandora. Do you guys remember that one? Or Pandorum?
No.
Is this the one where they're on the spaceship with the freezers and like everybody goes crazy?
Yes.
See, I don't know. I have a bit of a beef with movies that take as their premise space makes people crazy, which is basically the premise there. Like it's interesting, and actually the only one that really goes nuts is the captain. Boy, did he flake out. But even that's like a limit. Like, yes, bad leadership is disastrous, and a bad captain's about as bad as it can get. But I don't want to spoil Pandorum for anyone who hasn't seen it, so I'm not going to. But the
Oh, and
amount
it's
of damage
28% review rating. That's
it's not that horrible. It's
that
just
is
I've got
horrible.
Pandorum? It has that bad a rating? What?
28%.
IMDb?
Rotten Tomatoes, so that's general, polling all different places.
Wow.
I mean, granted, Van Helsing had something rating, and I really like that movie, so that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I just find it fun.
Right. Can't trust critic ratings at this point. I don't understand. Like, I would think that they would love it, just because it's got Lovecraft, it's got madness, it's got Dennis Quaid.
It's funny because my thought with Van Helsing was Van Helsing particularly would have like say a 50% because if you don't like this sort of genre then you'll find it dumb, but if you do you'll enjoy it. But it had like a 20%, which still baffles me. Pandorum seems the same thing. I'm looking at the plot and whatever, and I'm like, I feel like there are some artsy critics who would just love this thing.
Right. It's worth seeing, like genuinely. I'm genuinely surprised that they
I gotta see Monster Girl Doctor.
not
You do?
bad. There's a what's the other call? There's the one I haven't seen, which is what's the romance on the space transport, which is two
Passengers.
people wake up. Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah, that also, I know some of the Superversives I know absolutely passengers got terrible reviews.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was fine.
I've only seen bits and pieces of that movie.
It's better than people say, but the thing is, it doesn't really have. So like, the key drama to the characters is actually brilliant. The robot overhears the guy saying to the girl, "Oh, we've got no secrets." But his terrible secret is that he specifically woke her up because he couldn't
Oh.
bear being lonely anymore.
Right.
So in other words, the robot is like, "Wow, you're taking this pretty well." What do you mean? Well, he woke you up specifically. She's like, "What? He ruined my life?" Yes, and it it's actually brilliant because like it uses the internal logic of the system to just make something quite dramatic at it. It's great.
Because I know like some of the Superversives who were talking about it just absolutely love Passengers.
Mm.
So yeah, like it's a Superversive masterpiece or whatever. And maybe I also know John C. Wright loves Winter's Tale and the John C. Wright and Jaji, the Wright family. And I have literally never met anybody but them who has even seen that movie,
Which
let alone
movie?
liked it. A Winter's Tale, not Shakespeare, different movie.
I haven't even heard of
Oh,
it.
I haven't
Yeah,
either. Help me out here,
ask
bud.
if you've never heard of it, ask Joshi about it one day because she'll be delighted to talk to you. But it bombed. I remember it because I remember them talking about it specifically. It got terrible reviews. It absolutely bombed. And I think you might even find something on John's website on sci-fi-right.com, him talking about A Winter's Tale. But the
Hmm.
thing about that movie that's even stranger is I've heard people talk about Passengers. Interstellar was there's like a certain subset of people who consider it a masterpiece.
I loved Interstellar.
Yeah, I'm in
I'm
that
one of them.
subset.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Interstellar
I
was
would say so.
fantastic.
But it's got like in the 70s ratings wise, which isn't shocking because I could see why it's
It's not for everybody.
I can understand 70s. That makes sense to me. I'm looking up Winter's Tale on John's website now to see if I can find the article,
I can't
and I
tell what
get
it's about. I've seen bits of it here on YouTube, but I can't tell what it's about.
A Winter's Tale movie.
Oh well.
I looked at it. Apparently, it's about a burglar who reincarnates, um, which I dig. That
Somebody was
isn't the
going to
worst
die,
premise.
or like somebody was going to die. The girl, yeah, got 13% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh no!
And I remember, like Jaji and John were both said it was like their favorite movie.
Hmm.
And I've never heard of anybody else who's even seen it.
Yeah, I haven't.
Like I can't even say dislike it. Like they didn't even see it.
Hmm.
Aha! I found it. This is the first sentence of John's review. It is blah, 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 blah. It's a difficult review to write, perhaps impossible, because the very act of saying anything about this movie runs the risk of decreasing your odds of enjoying it as it was meant to be enjoyed. It is as if every movie has a miracle meant for one who sits in the audience to watch and be carried away. This may be that movie for you. It may be your golden story. It was mine.
Huh.
Got quite a bit of comments, but all people who are basically like, oh, a few people who saw it because he recommended it. It seems like, and most people. Some review.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Man, I'm amazed I remember this because I'm looking. I'm like, oh my god, it's from 6 years ago. I'm surprised I even remember this, but I do.
Right? Because
This has nothing to. Yeah, this has nothing to do with nothing. By the way, this is a complete rabbit hole just on movies that are good but got bad reviews.
That it is. Huh. Okay.
so far. Speaking of those, I've yet to meet anyone. So I wrote a short story called Doom Garden, which is about the Doom Marine. It's actually quite funny. It's got decent action in it, but it's like all the people who are reviewing it are like, "What's with this story in the middle of my Harry Potter fan fictions?" And of course, it's very good fiction. Each one with their own little world and characters and stuff like that. But then it's like, yes, and then the Warren G. Harding statue came alive and beat a demon to death with his bare hands.
Ah,
And of course,
I think it
like,
was hilarious.
right?
Maybe they didn't understand it
It
was
is.
comedy.
It
It
it's
was hilarious.
right, and like I don't know, maybe they took it too seriously, but I've yet to meet people who like remember it beyond. You mean the Warren G. Harding statue?
It's
Yes.
pretty memorable.
It's like I don't know, like I've never really understood that like why people don't do this more and more and more.
Very
But
few people can quite match your level of random. It's a pretty special thing, and I'm glad it's here because
aw,
it has made many a much too real week far more surreal as it should be. Um, yeah, Doom Gardener is basically if the Doom guy from the games, the demon hunting, armored chainsaw wielding Doom guy, is a gardener at a magic school. And then he just takes it from there. And
right.
it is absolutely insane.
What are
And
these
I
kids?
laughed until I just about fell out of my chair.
It's yeah, thank you. It's it's pretty great. Like the Fantastic Schools anthology is pretty awesome. Um and overall, like honestly, I think uh the Soul anthology that's coming out with your story Sundown and Out will be probably one of the best uh set of them, just because Sundown and Out is an awesome epic story. Um the way you set up the technology and have it all work through is just fantastic. Like honestly, the more you read my books, the more you realize I'm just going to keep on having excuses as to why the guy loses his guns and has to fisticuff the monster on top of the burning zeppelin. But sometimes some people can just use that technology, and that's actually one of the strong points of Terra Hard Moon that I've been reading so far. Warrior integration, just because you set up those deliveries and it's like, yes, behold the carbon nano single molecule blade. What are we going to do with this? Fun things. And then you start smashing people with elevators or cutting them apart and open and all this other horrible things, and it just gets better and better. um Honestly, I'm enjoying it. uh Yeah, I don't. It's like it's one of those things where like I haven't finished it yet, but from what I've read and from what I am reading, it's overall just a pretty great experience. When do you think your next full length novel will come out?
Well, this next one, we're going to see how CKP wants to unleash it on the world. It could be one book at a time, or it could be a tightly packed trilogy like the other one is. It will probably start seeing the light of day probably early next year.
Ooh,
I think if I can get a trilogy going a year, it's probably a pretty good rate. Um, this one basically operates on this upcoming series operates under the principle that giant bots are good, space is good, giant bots in space are better.
mm,
So he's a Jovian mech pilot, and by this point, the gas giants have moons and space stations and cities held up in the atmosphere, so they have an advanced society already. And Jupiter is one of the more powerful of them. And so it's going to follow the trail of this man as he deals with a solar system that's becoming unzipped because of the singularity crisis.
Yep. Which, of course, leads to epic space battles. So many epic space
Oh
battles.
yes, no, there's going to be more space battles than in, and there's quite a few in Singularity War, but Singularity War is more personal stuff.
Right. You gotta be fighting some sort of super soldier on top of a burning, capital ship as it hits Martian atmosphere or something like that, which I'm always fond of. There's no limit to how many burning things you can put your protagonist on before it gets tiresome. You just have to make sure it's not the same thing twice. A Zeppelin, a space station, a Metal Gear.
Like the Monkey Island insult contest. You can't repeat the same insult twice. You can have as many burning items as you want, but you can't repeat the same one or you lose.
Yep.
You're not wrong. I don't even use fire all that much in Hard Moon because it's all in vacuum, but I always manage to find some kind of hazardous location to have a fight in. I think my one favorite one was I was watching YouTube videos and there was this guy who's free climbing a TV antenna. Not the little ones we have out in the East Coast, but the great big honking ones in the Midwest that can go all the way out to the horizon.
Yep.
For like half of a state. The fat 1,000, 2,000 foot tall ones. And I'm watching this, and my first thought is this guy's crazy. My second thought is I'd throw up if I tried doing it. My third thought is this is a great place for an action scene.
Right.
So he climbs he has to have a running gunfight against drones and others on a comm spar on the southern pole of the moon. So.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the cover for State of Terra is accuracy in advertising. He does indeed get into a fight on the outside of a spaceship that's entering the Earth's atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Because always give people more.
Absolutely. Give the people what they want. What do the people want? They want more explosions, and that's why Michael Bay is a top tier selling studio producer.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah.
much the only reason. Fantastic. I'm gonna put up a link to the Singularity War book, or the first one anyway, up on the chat. We've been talking for quite some time.
Yep, it's probably about time for me to be going here in a little bit. Thank you very much for hosting and bringing my work on here. I appreciate it a great deal.
Absolutely. Ken Dickinson go, what do the people want? We want WOG. DACA, 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 DACA. More DACA. Thank you, David. Thank you for being patient with us while you waited your turn. And we look forward to your next book, Far Ships or Singularity War or whatever the fates deem it to be.
More is to come.
Excellent. And thank you all for listening. We had a pretty good showing today. Double digits for most of it. Thank you all. We do it for you.